It is Media Day here at the CU Event Center. The Buffs excited about getting a brand new season underway. Voice of the Buffs, Mark Johnson, Dallas Walton, big fella joining us. First off, it's great to see you back out there. Let's get to the health thing. How you feeling? How's the leg?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. I mean, it feels good to be back out here as well. I mean, a lot of work was put in order for me to come back as well. I mean, today actually marks the day that I thought I was not going to be able to play basketball again. So it feels wonderful being back out here.
All right, this team here today, there's a lot of depth in this team. Now there's a lot of experience on this team. What are you liking about this group and why are you excited about it?
I love how competitive our practices are. I mean, the chirping never stops. I mean, the guys like, T-Bay, McKinley, I mean, they're going to give you everything you got, Ev too. So, I mean, when guys are doing that in practice, I mean, it's only making us better and it's only preparing us for what we're going to see this season in terms of people are going to be really competitive with us.
How does this team play from in front now? What I mean by that, you guys picked second in the Pac-12. There's expectations. So you guys are going into a season with a lot of expectations, a lot of promise. That's a little bit different mentality, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's just making sure that every day, every practice, when we say it's on, it really means it's on. Just like when we go into a game and we say it's on, we can't come out kind of lackadaisical, because then we'll find ourselves down 15-20 at halftime and wondering what happened. So it's like whenever we start practices, our practices has got to be sharp and crisp and on point every day. We got to make sure that that's a consistent thing.
All right, can't wait to see you back in the court this year.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, that's Dallas Walton. The Buffaloes going to open up the season here in just a few weeks. Right now, let's send to the podium head coach Tad Boyle and his preseason comments.
You're going to step out.
Hey everybody, welcome to Colorado Basketball Media Day. Once again, I'd like to introduce head coach Tad Boyle, entering his 10th year here at Colorado. Coach will start with an opening statement and then we'll open it up for questions. We do have mics for the media, so please raise your hand. You'll be given a mic to ask your questions. Thank you, Coach. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for being here. It's an exciting day, obviously, and an exciting year for Colorado basketball. And I said I was humbled and honored to be the coach when I got the job 10 years ago. I still feel that way today. I'm fortunate to represent this university and this basketball program, and I think we've got a group of guys this year that are going to represent us well on the floor. I think they represent us well off the floor as well, which is important to me, but I've got a group of guys that I truly love coming to the arena every day to work with, and they're a great group of kids, and we've got some talented guys, and it's going to be hopefully an exciting year, and we'll see how it all unfolds. That's what makes this sport so great. But here we go, year 10.
Okay, raise your hands for questions and take one of the mics.
Coach, are you personally feeling any pressure to get this team back to the NCAA tournament? I mean, obviously, great success. First part of your tenure here, it's been since 2016 since you've been there. How are you dealing with that?
Look, I put pressure on myself every day. And every year that we don't go to the tournament, I'm disappointed. And so I wouldn't say there's any more pressure. I don't put any more pressure on myself this year than I have in years past. I always go into the season, with an expectation level. And this year I'd be lying if I said my expectation level wasn't a little bit higher than maybe it has been in years past. So I don't look at it as pressure, Pat. I look at it as an expectation level and a standard that we've tried to set for this program, and our players understand it as well. But I think it's really important that for our team, you forget that you're dealing with 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, that we don't put pressure. I don't put pressure on them. You guys can. I mean, that's what the media sometimes can do. But it's important for us internally, both as a coach and certainly as our players, that we don't play with pressure. We got to play with a standard and expectation that we have of ourselves, but not pressure. So I don't feel any more this year than years past.
Coach, the hype around the team this year, you're picked second in the Pac-12 to finish. How do you keep the guys grounded, not getting drunk on their own wine early on?
Well, we talk about it, number one. I think it's something we've addressed with our team. We're continue to address it with them. And you call it hype. I call it noise, and we have to not listen to that noise, not that hype, however you want to term it. But I think it's important that our players understand that. And again, it gets back to my job on a day-to-day basis is to hold them to a standard and an expectation level that we need to adhere to get done what we need to get done. And I'll use an example of our first open scrimmage that we had a week or two before the Arizona State football game. And, some fans came in and our players, they scrimmaged and they went up and down. And as I took that film home and watched it, it was atrocious. And I let them know that the next day. And I didn't just talk about it. I showed it to them on film, and our guys understood that, yeah, we weren't very good in these certain areas. And so it allows me the opportunity to kind of jump on them, if you will. I wouldn't say I'm screaming and yelling, because this is a very responsive group. But what I love about this team is after that film session, I've seen a lot of progress in the areas that we talked about. And so it's our job as coaches to make sure we're setting that standard and expectation level and holding them to that, and trying to get them to understand that the outside stuff doesn't matter. It really doesn't. What matters is what do we do between those lines. And the biggest challenge we have as coaches today is to get that noise out of their head, and because it's coming through to them on those devices that they look at every single day, and we have to combat that, quite frankly.
Tad, you do a pretty harsh self-evaluation every year after every season, looking at how you coached and what you did. What did you look at last year? What do you have to bring in this year, given the expectations that are on this team, and what do you have to do a little differently with your job?
Yeah, Neil, I think if you look at last year's team, and as I did our self-evaluation, and hey, where can we get better? It's really a function of picking up where we left off, if you will, and because I thought last year's team really improved as the season went on. We got hot at the end. We played well down the stretch, and it's important that we understand where we were at the end of last year, because we only have really two new players, Dallas Walton, and Dallas is, you can consider him new, but he was around last year, so he saw it, but he obviously was out with his ACL. And then Maddox Daniels is a new player, but everybody else is returning. So this is a team that can, take off where we left off. And if we do that and use that as a starting point and continue to get better from there, that's where the excitement comes. I think if we were welcoming 4 or 5 new faces, I think that's the reason why people have expectations of our team this year, is because of what we have coming back. So we can't backslide. We can't go 2 steps backwards. We need to start off where we left off, which was playing pretty darn good basketball.
Coach, you said your expectations are high. Everyone's expectations are high. Where do you see this team in terms of talent and potential compared to years past?
Well, I think our we've had some pretty darn good players come through this program, in the last 10 years since our staff has been here, and we've got some good players on this team. What will the players do from this team going forward in their careers? We don't know that, but we know what Spencer's done in the NBA, what Derek's done, what Andre's done, what Alec has done, what George King did while he was here. So sometimes you look at that in retrospect as you see what they do after they leave here. But what I like about this team is we've got quality players. We've got 2 first-team All-League guys, McKinley Wright and Tyler Bay, coming back. Evan Batty's coming off a heck of a year. Lucas Seward and Shane Gatling are seniors. Dalen Kuntz really played well down the stretch. So we've got a lot of good players on this team that are coming back. But what excites me, I think, the most about this team is our depth and our quality depth. And I think that's where we can hopefully differentiate ourselves as we move through this season, because we know injuries are a part of college sports. I mean, you see that with football right now. That's part of the game. This team is built right now to sustain some of that. You can only take so much. We noticed with McKinley's injury last year that we took maybe a step or two back after that injury, but then we figured it out, and he played through it. But I like the depth of this team and the quality depth. And we'll see, as the season goes, who kind of steps forward. And, Deshaun Schwartz, I look at as kind of an X factor for this team. He's had a great offseason and is playing extremely well right now. Evans playing really well right now. We've got a really good core group of guys.
Coach, in getting back to practice and into the swing of things before the season, have any players surprised you or stood out to you?
I wouldn't say surprised, but I'll mention Deshaun had a great offseason. He's really stepped his game up. Dalen has stepped his game up. Maddox Daniels, junior college players come in, you expect maybe a little bit more out of them than maybe freshmen, and that's been the case with Maddox. He's been shooting the ball extremely well in practice, and we're going to need that because that was one of our deficiencies last year. Of last year's team was we were not a great three-point shooting team, and something each player has worked on this offseason to get better at, but also we tried to bring in a guy like Maddox to shore that up as well. So I wouldn't say there's been any major surprises. I think everybody's had good off seasons, some better than others, but again, that'll play itself out as we start playing our games and you start seeing guys emerge and evolve.
Coach, what are you most looking forward to about the chance to play in China to start the year?
The most looking
Most
forward?
looking forward to playing in China to start the year.
Well, number one, I'm looking forward to playing Arizona State, a conference opponent who's a quality conference opponent, and they're going to have some new faces. They've got good players returning as well, guys like Remy Martin and Romello White and Kamani Lawrence. They got some guys coming back that are good players. So the first thing I think about on that trip is who you're playing. Secondarily, obviously it's a great opportunity for our university and certainly our basketball program to go showcase what we're all about in a foreign country and to experience a city like Shanghai and a culture like China and have that opportunity for your student athletes to experience. Nobody that's going on that trip has been to that country. And so it's going to be a great learning experience for our team, both on the floor and off the floor. And that to me, that's what excites me about that trip is learning and growing as a group, both as a basketball team, but also as college students.
Tad, you mentioned a couple times last year Evan's great post-passing ability, but we never really got to see it as much as I think you wanted to. This year, I know you're kind of designing some offensive packages around that with 4 out, 1 in. How do you see your offense evolving, particularly through those big men? And Evan, he mentions Nikola Jokic as someone he's kind of looking up to, and that's pretty big.
Yeah, no, and Evan's a special player, and I think people as his game evolved last year, I think people saw that, and I think I'd mentioned it, midway through the Pac-12 season. It's like that's the guy we recruited, that we finally saw, and it took a while. Based on what he had to overcome. But in terms of our offensive philosophy, whether we have Evan in a game or not in the game, we want to always play inside out. We want to play through our bigs. And it doesn't always mean they have to catch the ball in the post. We want to get the ball in the paint, driving the ball. We've got some great penetrators, guys like McKinley and Dalen that can get the ball in the lane and make plays for the bigs that way. But also, catching the ball in the post. And I always tell our post guys, for you to be effective, you have to demand double teams. And Evan's the kind of guy, if he catches it deep in there, you better double him because he's so big and strong. He's going to get the ball to the rim or he's going to get fouled. And the beauty of Evan's game is when you double him, he's going to find open guys, and you play inside out. And so our three-point shooting will become better the more we get the ball inside. So getting the ball inside is one thing, but getting it kicked out is another thing. And Evan's one of those post players. If I'm playing with him, I'm getting him the ball because I know he loves to kick it back out. And I think our guys are understanding that. But we've got other guys. Lucas is a good passer from down there. Dallas is a good passer. Tyler's become a better passer down there. So what I like about this team is we can really attack the rim through our bigs, but also kick it out and hopefully be able to knock down some threes as a result of that.
Tad, when McKinley got here 2 years ago, I guess, He was obviously a top level player right away. But what has happened with him from a maturation standpoint, both physically and maybe between the years and the experience aspect of basketball, that's kind of elevated his game now as you watch him as a third-year guy?
Yeah, Mark, great question. I think when I think of that in McKinley Wright, you're right. He was a great player when he got here, and he could score. We know McKinley can make big shots and loves to take big shots, but I think where his game is really elevated and where he's matured, if you will, is understanding that he needs his teammates. And so it's not just relying on his God-given ability and his ability to score the ball and attack the rim, but he understands, for me to be my best, I need Deshaun Schwartz and Shane Gatling and Maddox Daniels to be able to space the floor. I need Tyler Bay to be able to roll to the rim and Evan Batty to roll to the rim and suck the defense with them. So I think his reliability on his teammates is something that he's gotten better at. And I've always said good players make themselves better, and we've known McKinley's a good player. Great players make their teammates better. And I think that's what you're starting to see with him. I think we started to see it last year, and I've certainly seen it in the start of our practices this year. Is, you know, he understands it doesn't have to be all on his shoulders. And he's a guy who wants to take it all on his shoulders because he's got the heart of a lion and a heart of a champion. But relying on his teammates is going to be key for him to be as good as he can be this year. And his teammates need to understand that as well. You know, he's our engine. He's the straw that stirs our drink. But it's got to be more than just McKinley Wright. And he understands that now, I think, as a player.
Tad, just to follow up on your bigs, you guys have largely been known for your guards here between Spencer and Alec and some of the great guards you've had here. But what have you learned from guys in the past, your bigs? I mean, Josh Scott, Andre Roberson, and at times even Wes and Torrey playing through that inside-out mentality in the Pac-12, and what can translate from those past teams and what made, I guess, around Josh so successful in terms of what he dominated. And you've got 4 different options down there, 4 different unique looks.
I think every big is different. You know, Josh Scott, you mentioned Josh. Josh was a kind of post player. You said, okay, let's get the ball into Josh because he's really good with his back to the basket, and he can really operate and score down there. He got better over both shoulders. Tyler Bay is a different kind of big. Tyler's the kind of big, we're not necessarily going to get him the ball with his back to the basket, but you want to get Tyler Bay the ball going to the basket, rolling, or in the dunker spot that we call, and he can get the ball to the rim quickly because he's so explosive and athletic. Evan's the kind of guy who can get the ball on a roll, or he can get the ball with his back to the basket. He's kind of multidimensional. Lucas Seward is a pick-and-pop big, but he also has gotten better at rolling on switches or mismatches. So every big you have has different skill sets. Dallas's skill set is different than Lucas's. Lucas is different than Evan's. Evans is different than Tyler's. And I think it's important as coaches that we put those guys in positions to make the plays that they're capable of making. And based on that player, we gotta design things to try to get them the ball in areas. And that's where McKinley comes, and Shane, and one guy we haven't talked about that is not going to play this year is Keyshawn Bartholomew, who's a freshman guard who is going to be a terrific player for us. But you come to watch our practice, and you'll see Keyshawn making plays to those bigs just like McKinley is and some of our other guards. So I think our bigs have different skill sets, and that's what excites me about this team is the ability to use those.
Having so many bigs, can you bring Dallas along on a little more of a pitch count than if you didn't have 3 other big guys in there in the middle like that?
Absolutely, Neil. When Dallas and I have talked about that, I think, he's going to play with the brace on this year. And I understand that. I'm not fighting Dallas on that at all. But I also know as a coach that until that brace is gone, the knee's not 100%. Because if the brace is there, the mind is using that as a brace. But look, he's 7 foot tall. He's been through it before, and he's got 3 years of eligibility remaining, assuming that we get a waiver when that time comes. And we have some depth in that position, so it allows Dallas to come back at his own pace. I love your term pitch count because that's really a great analogy to baseball, because that's what we're going to do. And I've got to trust Dallas when it comes to listening to him. His knee might be sore one day, it might swell up one day. Guess what? Let's take a day off, whatever the case may be. So we can bring him back at his own pace, and it's not one where I got to throw him into the fire. And we wouldn't want to do that anyway. But it's a nice position to be in, both for Dallas and for me. We don't need 30 minutes a night, but he brings something to our team that we don't have, and so do we need that? Yeah, having a 7-foot rim protector, a guy who's skilled, a guy who's played in Pac-12 level games before. Yeah, that helps. It's also nice to have a guy like Alex Strading, who, as the season went on last year, is a guy you can plug in there for different. That's another guy that doesn't. A Swiss Army knife, exactly. And Alex is a guy I got a lot of confidence in, and I know his teammates do too. Frank Ryder is a walk-on who's not your normal typical walk-on. I would not hesitate in a minute if we needed to play Frank for some time in Shanghai against Arizona State. Doesn't scare me a bit. So we've got some guys that can plug some holes.
This is obviously a really good problem to have, but you have so many pieces here. How do you mesh it all together? How do you keep everybody happy? I mean, there's so many guys you can put in there.
The only way I keep everybody happy is if we have complete buy-in that we're playing for the name on the front of our jersey, not for the name on the back of our jersey. It's the only way, because there's not enough minutes to go around for all the players we have. And there are going to be some players on certain nights that aren't going to play, or they're certainly not going to play as much as they want to play, or maybe that they deserve to play. There's just not enough minutes to go around for this team. So can I keep everybody happy with minutes? The answer is no. I can't do that. So we have to do it through the buy-in of we're playing for Colorado. We're not playing for, myself. And if our players can buy into that, we got a chance. If they don't, we'll have some unhappy guys. And you know what? We better be winning. Because if you're winning and you got unhappy guys, you're winning. But if you're losing and you got unhappy guys, that's when you got problems. We don't want that.
First, real quick, do you have captains? And second, see you working on a 1-3-1 trap out there. You have a veteran team. You have a chance to add, maybe do some different things. What might we see this year that's different?
Well, we've added a few things offensively. You mentioned the 1-3-1. I'm not, as you know, zone is a 4-letter word in my vocabulary. Not that we won't play it, but, a lot of times you have to put stuff in to practice against it. Because the one thing you realize you're going to Shanghai to play a game, you have to be ready for anything and everything that might come your way. And I know Bobby Hurley is a man-to-man coach, just like I'm a man-to-man coach. So I'm expecting man-to-man, but you know what? We played Arizona State in Tempe last year. They came out in a 2-3 zone, and so did we. So you just don't know. They throw a 1-3-1 zone at us, we got to be ready to play. So that's why we worked on it today. It wasn't because we're going to be a 1-3-1 zone team, okay? And I can't remember your first part of your question.
Well, also, what will be different this year? But do you have captains?
Oh, do we have captains? Yeah, right now we don't have captains. We may have captains. It's one of those situations. I've never been a captain guy. But I never say never. And I think there's some guys in this team that I think deserve. We know who our leaders are. And sometimes naming a captain, I've always felt as a coach, you empower guys. McKinley Wright doesn't need to be empowered. He's one of our leaders. And my guess is if our team voted on captains, he'd be one of our captains. So what I don't want to do is stunt somebody else's leadership ability that doesn't have the captain's role or the captain's title. I want them to feel like they can lead just like – and sometimes you give a guy a captain's role, and they're not a captain. So that's always been my reluctance. I've always felt like leadership emerges, and it emerges when adversity hits. And we've had some teams here when adversity hits and leadership has not emerged, you don't have any leaders. And it's something we talk about. It's something we try to develop. but some guys have it and some guys don't. You can't make somebody be a leader by calling them a captain. So it's a philosophical thing that I could talk for a long time about, but that's kind of where I'm at on that. So I'm not saying we won't, but right now we don't.
Hey, Ted, you might not be a captain guy, but I know you're a defensive guy.
I am.
All right?
I
And
am.
after 10 years of being around you and watching your program, as much talent as this group has to put the ball in the hoop, how much talent does it have defensively?
We've got some, there's no doubt, and that's the challenge. I think it starts with on the ball defense, and whether you're playing man or playing zone, you got to be able to guard the ball. And I think we've got a couple guys, McKinley Wright being one of them. He was an honorable mention, I think, all defensive team last year. In my mind, he's a first team all league. He's a great on ball defender. We need to get more guys like him. I think Evan is a really good post defender. He's a willing defender. He's got great feet for a guy his size. Tyler is a very capable defender. Is he a consistent defender? That's something we continually work with him on. But he's got the size and the length and the athleticism, obviously, to be a great defender. So, yeah, this team has a very, very high upside when it comes to defensive ability. And a lot of it is right here and right here. Skill and positioning can only take you so far when it comes to defense. And sometimes the guys that don't have the skill or don't have the athleticism but have the heart and the desire end up being your best defenders anyway. Alex Strading is a great example of that. He's always in the right position. Now, he can't come from the weak side and block a shot like Tyler can. So you got different guys with different skill sets defensively, but you're right, Mark. I am a defensive-minded guy, and that's where we start. And this team has a great opportunity. I think we were 5th in the league last year, 43% field goal percentage defense. To me, I want to be top 3 in the league and get that thing closer to 40%. And then we got a chance to win every game.
Tad, you've got a unique perspective having played Division I basketball and certainly now coaching at this elite level. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on the bill signed into law in California, which would allow student athletes to profit off their likeness.
Well, I played so long ago I can't remember what it was like being a player. I was not a player that was worth paying, I can tell you that. But look, this is one of those. It's one of those situations, and we see it. You see it going on with the NBA in China right now, and I think the name, image, and likeness situation is kind of college basketball's version of that right now. Everybody has an opinion, and at the end of the day, my opinion really doesn't matter a whole lot. But my opinion is this: I think amateurism and the way that the NCAA has defined amateurism has changed, and I think it is continually changing. I think there's a working group that Rick George is on that's looking at this issue from every angle, and so I'm going to defer to them. But I think you've seen with all the things that have gone on with fueling stations and food for our student athletes and the things that they have available to them now that they didn't have available to them. And I'll give you an example. I mean, when I got here, we could provide our players bagels in the locker room before practice in the morning. But we could not provide them peanut butter or cream cheese for those bagels. That was the NCAA rule. Well, now they got bacon and eggs and omelets, and they got everything they want before or after practice. So, like, our players, they got it pretty good from that standpoint right now. Now, is it going to change in terms of what else does amateurism, define? That's going to happen. I don't know what the result of that working group is going to be. I don't have any inside information. I'm not sure they know the answer to that yet. But I know it's being looked at. What do I think about it? I think, we live in interesting times. When I see different states making different rules, and we have a national organization, you got some issues there. Those issues are going to be resolved, as we go through. And I know California is 2023 before that law goes into effect. A lot of people have opinions about it. Tad Boyle's really doesn't matter, quite frankly. What matters is what that working group comes up with, what the courts decide, what every state decides, and then how the NCAA reacts to that. And I don't I don't know what the result's going to be. I don't think anybody does. But it's an interesting topic of conversation that I'm watching and everybody else is watching, and we'll see how it all plays out.
I think we have time for one quick question. If anybody's got anything left?
I realized recently that your real name isn't Tad. Can you tell us how you got the nickname Tad?
My real name is Thomas. My father was a Thomas. They didn't want two Thomases in the family, so they gave me a nickname Tad because they didn't want confusion. And then my mom would yell from the kitchen, "Tad, take out the garbage," and my dad thought she said Dad, and he'd go take out the garbage. It kind of backfired on him, but Tad and Dad kind of got confusing, but they didn't want two Thomases, so. Or Dad would tell me to go take out the garbage. I think that's really how it worked out.
Okay, we might have a few minutes with Coach out in the hallway.